Welcome to this month's webinar Q&A with Kim. Julia, who is here in spirit, she's going to come on any second. And I, doing our live Q&A, just answering the questions that people have sent us, might have posted on the Bellies Inc trainer page, or, you know, I often, every once in a while, especially when we do our mentor hours, I like to, again, share that information here too, because I know not only one person is asking, you know, a lot of people are asking the same questions. So what I was going to start off with is I had a mentor call just on Friday with one of our VIPs, and she works at a gym like a lot of us do, or like a lot of us did before, and we started out that way. And she's running a very, very, very successful, since taking our course, a really successful series of classes. And, but you know, the limitations with gyms, prices and all kinds of other things. And so she's finally going to start running classes out of her home, which I think is fantastic. And she was asking how much to charge. And actually, we also had a little bit of a conversation on our Bellies Inc trainer page. Someone had asked about how to charge for classes, whether you do a drop-in, charge individually, or charge everything up front. Absolutely, hands down, if you've got a series of classes, which I think you should, do not do it as a drop-in, as a, you know, come in when you can, especially when it's something specific as this. If you're doing a core restore, diastasis, pelvic floor, whatever it is, we know how important that it is that people are compliant, they're consistent. I mean, we always say consistency is key. Fitness are not consistent, but if they want to stop peeing their pants and they want to look good, then they need to be consistent. So I would absolutely suggest setting up a series of classes, not too many, especially with, you got to think about your target demographic, right? If you're dealing with new moms, if you say this is a 20 session series of classes, forget it. No one's going to commit for that long, but maybe 6 to 12, I would say 12 maximum. And you absolutely are taking the full fee for all the classes up front. This way, and we know this, that's why gyms, you know, they sell packages for personal training. There's a pretty good chance they're going to show up for most of them because they've already paid. They've made the financial commitment. The drop-in is too much of a, you're going to have all the space put aside, and then you really run the risk of people not showing or it not being worth your time. So, and because, and she had said, you know, how much should I charge? And I was like, well, I just finished a series of classes in a boutique yoga studio. And, you know, I'm going to age myself, but in the beginning of time when I used to go to the gym, classes were like $10 or $12 a class. It was $21 a class. And I was like, I almost threw up in my mouth when I had to pay, but I wanted the experience. So if I'm paying $21 a class to go lie on the floor and breathe, and which is awesome because I leave my house, someone's going to pay at least 25 to 30 bucks a class to see you so you can actually fix them. Because at the end of the day, this is very rehabilitative, and that's the difference. It's not personal. It's not a training class. It's not personal training. It's not a boot camp. This is rehabilitative, and you have to remember that you know a lot more than most of the trainers out there. So I would say 25 to 30 bucks a class. And if people are desperate enough, honestly, and most of the women are, they're fed up. They want to get their tummy back. They want to stop peeing. They will pay. So that's what I would do. Your thoughts on that, Kim?
You do also have to pay attention to your market. So if you're in a hub, Toronto, Vancouver, major city center, yes, absolutely, you're going to be able to charge those and command those prices. If you're out more in the boonies, you're obviously need to adjust your pricing. So that's the only disclaimer I would say there. But the other thing I found I did early on when I was starting to do this, I was doing some drop-in classes. And I found pretty quickly that a drop-in class really was challenging with this kind of stuff. So trying to, you know, if you have newbies coming in all the time and then you have to kind of give them, okay, well, you got to work on your posture and you got to use the core breath and here's some cues, and all the other people who've done it, it's disconnected from them. And it's just too particular to put into a drop-in type series. So really the way I found was best for me was to run a series of 6 weeks. And everybody who joined the first week, the first session was the assessment for everybody. So everybody got their own individual assessment. So they came out of that with their core cue, an understanding of the pelvic floor and the alignment and, you know, kind of our ABCs. They had a basic understanding and they knew what their core activation cue was, so that when we were all in the class, we were all progressing at the same time. They were all using, like my teaching was, okay, now you want to exhale to engage with your core cue. And, you know, if you teach a group class where it is drop-in and you throw in a cue like blueberries or jellyfish or whatever it is, that to somebody who's heard it before, it might resonate with them. But if you're just, or saying activate your pelvic floor, nobody really knows what that is. And at the end of the day, the intention of what we're trying to do is to bring this awareness into the fitness world where people move better, move with awareness, move with a different knowledge. And group classes are challenging for that. So
I was going to say that I stopped teaching classes years ago. So for those of you guys who run classes, kudos to you, man. Because honestly, my biggest frustration was trying to get all these people on the same wavelength, even if they did all come consistently, but if they were actually paying attention because they're looking at each other, they're chatting, which we want it to be social, absolutely. But I think this is because we can all agree that this is much more than just a fitness class. They really have to be present and really focus and understand the importance. If they really, and your goal obviously is we want to try our best to progress time. You don't have people coming halfway through your like in the middle of your classes, like at week, you know, week 4 or 5 going, you know what, I really can't do this. I need my money back. It's not working for me. It's a blah, 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 right? You're trying as hard as you can to,
and I think that if you wanted to, if after you've done your 6-week series, if you do have people asking for drop-in, then you can have, you know, graduates of 6-week can come to drop-in classes going forward if you want to do that. But again, I just found that, again, I made a comment and it was pretty harsh, but moms suck as clients. They really, really, truly do. And and a lot of people, not just moms, lots of people have fear of commitment nowadays. Very few people want to commit to anything. So if you always constantly run drop-in, you're always going to be losing out on revenue, and you're going to be putting out this effort and work, and you're going to be showing up and you get maybe 2 people. And it doesn't, from an optics perspective, it doesn't look like, oh, that's not a very popular class if she only has 2 people.
Yeah.
So you really want to get the buy-in first, and get people to pay and commit. And if they don't come, who cares? You're still get paid, and you carry on.
Yeah. Or, and something else that maybe you could do to lure them to your classes, maybe offer some kind of a half-hour free workshop. Like if you're just, you know, if you're just trying to get the word out there, you got to really make your marketing good though. Like you got to market the shit out of it. Cause there's another thing. People, generally they don't put value on it if they're not paying. So then they won't go, oh, I'm not going to bother going. I had planned to, but I'm tired, whatever. Like as soon as they're tired, they're not going to come. Or maybe it could be a small nominal fee, a $10, whatever. And maybe it could be to raise funds for a local, whatever, a women's, whatever, shelter, but something to draw them in. And then after that, your workshop, that's when you upsell them for sure. Cause every time I work at mothers groups, I get flocks of people. Okay, where do I find this? Where do I go? What do I do? Because you've just left them kind of going, now what, right? And I just leave because I don't teach classes, but I do have a list of referrals that I always finish with, right?
And the other thing that I was going to say that's kind of on the same note is so I live in Port Moody, which it's like a suburb, I guess, if you want to call it, of Vancouver. So it's still a major city where I'm a 25-minute or half an hour drive from downtown Vancouver. Like it's still a big city. I started working in a clinic, and I guess about a year and a bit ago, started having office hours there because I was tired of going to people's homes. It's not a good use of my time. I was getting busier. I needed to really hone it in. So I had one clinic day. In advertising that, there's a big moms group here on Facebook, and I put there that I was going to be joining this clinic and I'm going to be here on these days, and I offered free sessions to anybody who was one of the moms, the moms in that group. And there was a huge amount of traction. Oh my gosh, I'm interested. I totally want to come. Blah, 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 blah. Like, probably, I don't even know how many people. It was lots of people posting saying they wanted to come. How many people came in and actually took advantage of that? The free session, maybe 3, maybe 4. I don't even remember, not very many. And so I always hesitated offering something for free, but I felt like I get tagged so much in this group. I wanted to offer them something. I'm starting out here. Let me build it up, blah, blah, blah. And so at the end of the day, I took it off. I stopped offering it. And now the people who come are the people that really, truly want help. They are going to pay, they're going to commit, and they are the ones that I want to work with. I don't want to work with the people who just want to sit there and get something for free and don't do it and then go complain saying it doesn't work.
Yep.
So,
Great.
yeah.
Great.
I feel like we're on the social or something, you know, with our cup of teas and we're talking about,
I know.
you know, the issues
I've
of life.
got hot water with lemon and ginger.
Yeah.
not because I'm sick, just because I love it and it's cold. Yeah.
Something else I wanted to talk about. I had a client the other day. So I have a colleague of mine. She actually took the Bellies Inc course. She's a chiropractor. She had her first baby about 8 months ago. And she has now, after our course and now having gone through her own pregnancy and postpartum period, she is preaching to everybody she knows, clients, friends, everybody, and many of her friends are having children. So everyone she knows, she's referring to us, which is great. And she had one friend the other day, so she messaged me privately and said, my friend had a baby 10 weeks ago, 10 weeks. And she went to see a pelvic floor physio. It's her second baby. She's done all the right things. She had a home birth. She, you know, everything was all la la la. But she feels like she's got a prolapse and she's feeling very disheartened. So this was her experience with a pelvic floor physio. Now, we love pelvic floor physios. We preach them from the, you know, tops of the rooftops. But there are some, just like there's good and bad trainers, there's good and bad physios.
Yep.
And this woman unfortunately had a not so good experience, and I wanted to share it with you. So she shared with her friend, she went to see the physio doing the right things, and she came out of there so deflated. She went in there feeling like, oh my God,
Can't hear you.
Kim.
Oh no.
Great things this time. I'm
She's frozen.
I rapped, I did all these things. And she came out of there and was going to have surgery. So afraid. So my friend,
Kim.
what? You can't hear me?
That whole thing, you were frozen and you sounded like a robot. And now, Julia, you're frozen.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm moving.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Wait.
Yeah.
Back?
Uh-oh.
Can you see me, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're all freezing just a little bit
Mm.
at one time or another. Okay, Kim, so everything you said up until surgery, could not hear a word.
Okay. So I'll
Can you move?
shorten that back down. So she went to see a Pardon?
Okay, do it again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of okay. Okay, go.
So this woman had her second baby. She felt like she was doing all the right things. She was going in to see a pelvic floor physio feeling very proud of herself for what she was doing. And she came out of there deflated because the physio told her that she was going to have a pessary if she wanted to do any form of exercise, that she should not exercise. She shouldn't do any exercise.
Oh.
And she was going to have surgery. And it was a stage 2 bladder prolapse. And she also taught her some hypopressives, but taught her incorrectly. So my friend messaged me and said, my friend's having a really hard time. She went to see pelvic floor physio. This was her experience. She was told that she shouldn't exercise. And I thought, oh my gosh, no, that's absolutely not what should be happening. So this woman came in to see me last week with her beautiful 10-week-old little baby who had the most perfect head I have ever seen on a baby ever. Like, it was perfection. Anyway, so I said, okay, show me your hypopressive. So she showed me, and she got into the pose correctly, but what she was doing is she would, after her exhalation, she was inhaling, and basically sucking, like trying to suck everything up and in rather than doing the proper apnea. So I corrected that with her. I did the regular assessment with her. And she left there feeling, after she did the apneas and the hypopressives correctly, she could feel the lift, and she felt like, oh my God, so much better.
Oh.
And so what I want to reiterate is that you get to know the physios that you refer to, and go in and have an assessment. Even if there's 3 of them, go have an assessment from all 3 of them so you can know what their style is.
Yeah. Yep, good idea.
And also that the message that we need to communicate to our women is that it's not about you can never do this again. It's about you need to move with awareness, and it becomes informed choice in your movement. Because there are some people who are told that they have a stage 2 prolapse and they don't care in some regard. Like they just carry on running, or maybe they do use a pessary, but for them, they need the mental sanity of running, and it's more challenging for them to sit and not do anything trying to protect their prolapse. Mm-hmm. So it becomes an informed choice, and our role really is to give you and our clients information and allow them to make choices in their movement that we can guide them and say, we wouldn't recommend this, but really we want to empower women to think that they can move, not that they're like, oh my God, I can't do anything because I don't want this to get any worse, so I'm just going to sit here. That's not good either. That is going to make your prolapse worse just by sitting and doing nothing.
Yeah.
So anyway, interesting experience.
I have a lot of comments on that. So we have about 80 pelvic floor physios in Toronto area right now. When I started 6-7 years ago, there was 11 of us. So there's a lot that have come onto the scene very, very quickly and with very little experience. And so those of us that are pelvic floor physios from way back, we're also coming in with years and years of experience. So we need to look at the body as a whole and not just the pelvic floor in its own little, even though it's the center of the universe, it also doesn't function without everything else, right? So there are, here in the city, I have fired pelvic floor physios from my clinic who weren't doing well or weren't suited for it. Some physios are being forced into being a pelvic floor physio because that's how they get the job or keep the job, and then realize it's not really for them, but now they're kind of stuck. So Kim is absolutely correct. Go get assessed by 1, 2, 3 pelvic floor physios, get an idea of what their personalities are like, what kind of clients they work best with, who they mesh with the best. Because there's even patients where, Shirley's a great example because Shirley and I work together. Shirley's our master trainer and she teaches our course and is the director of education. And so there are clients that she doesn't send to me because I'm very open, I'm very upfront, I am very kind of in your face. And that can be overwhelming for some women. So she'll send them to a pelvic floor physio who's a little bit more calm, a little bit more gentle, a little bit more conservative. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that I'm bad. It just means the connection wasn't going to be there. And that connection really needs to be there. So I have also gotten clients from colleagues that I trust and love and have actually seen or had work on me. I think they're great, but the personality just didn't mesh with the patient. And so then they come back to me and we're like, you sent me to this person because I've moved my clinic again. And they're like, but it's just not the same, or it didn't go well. And I have one very fascinating patient who saw both extremes. So she saw one of the very conservative, quiet type pelvic floor physios, and she saw, but very scientific. And she also saw, because that didn't go well, so then she went to see a more yogi type pelvic floor physio, very, almost airy-fairy, very light and very energetic, and didn't like either of them. I love both of them. I sent patients to both of them, but she didn't get what she needed from them. So she came to me, and she's very difficult. she's a really tough case, so I'm not surprised the 2 ends of the spectrum didn't work for her. And so we're trying to find a nice happy medium for her. But not all pelvic floor physios are great. Not all have taken the course and will have the same language as you. Some have taken courses with other people, have different beliefs, different value systems, and aren't going to talk the same language. So you really want to spend the time meeting and talking with the pelvic floor physios so that you're on the same page. I mean, Shirley was saying to me the other day, and actually a patient we're treating together, was like, you know, she'd say something to me and I would give her an answer. She'd be like, yeah, Shirley told me that too. I'm like, well, okay, Shirley's right. Or the same thing would happen. She'd be like, well, and they don't tell Shirley that they've asked me already. So what do you think of this? And Shirley answers her like, wow, that was verbatim what Julia said yesterday. And we hadn't talked in between. So you want to work with other health professionals, be it physios or chiros or massage therapists, that you're all on the same page. And that's how you avoid referring to someone who maybe isn't going to elevate what you do, especially as a trainer. It's really, really important that the communication be around the same and you support each other. I know Sam's had problems referring to some pelvic floor physios who don't do the same as us, and then the information's conflicting, and then the patient doesn't know what to do or where to go from there. But I will be the first as a pelvic floor physio to say they are not all created equal, just like every other profession, just like trainers and yoga instructors and OBs and midwives. We always have a spectrum in the relationship, so or in the profession. So build that relationship so you find ones that are really, really good. There was another point on there, Kim, I wanted to touch on. Now I talked in a circle and I don't remember.
Well, I was just going to make a point until you remember, if you remember, is that because of that, don't be afraid to question the physio, right?
Exactly.
Especially for like the newbies who might have just taken our course, maybe just starting your business. I can understand, but if there's no harm at all in just following up and going, you know, I heard this is, could you just clarify? Because I'm not quite sure how you came to that, whatever it is that, you know, and then you could also say, you know, because I was taught, and you could totally, you know, say you took our course and this is what I've taught. And what do you think of this? What are your thoughts on? And, you know, whenever I've done that, even like a few years ago when I had a hard time with this one particular physiotherapist, I still remember her. I was on the phone and she was like, well, so-and-so just went to Vegas and there was this course and she said this. And I was like, actually, no, I know that she didn't say this. But we really came to a happy medium on the phone. And she's like, okay, she said, you know, she also didn't have a problem admitting that, you know, she hadn't taken the course. She didn't know exactly what we were teaching. And she knew Julia and respected her very well. So she said, okay, so how about we work this way when I have your clients, right? And I said, sure, great. And then it just worked out well that way.
Talked to the instructors of the course after that incident. It's okay, I picked up for you. So I went back and talked to the instructors of the course and said, this is what the interpretation was from some of the people attending. And she looked horrified. She's like, that's not what I said. And so being very, very careful what you draw out of a course, but also what other people are talking. You know, well, the science is science, but interpretations of science run the gamut. The other thing I remembered was the movement part, the movement component. There are definitely movements that we don't want women with prolapses and incontinence to do right now, but that doesn't mean they can never do them. And if they're going to choose to do them, then they need to do it, as Kim said, with completely informed consent. I have 2 runners right now running with pads. Am I happy about it? No. But if I take running away from them, their whole lives will become a mess. They need running. It's the only resource they have to stress relief and to exercise. And they're the diehard runners. So it's really, really tough. But they're both aware that it's going to take much longer to get to the end result. And they've agreed to that. They do their exercises regularly, and we just mitigate anything that's happening. One of them has become leak-free, and then had an incident where her son was sick. She was up 2-3 times in the night, went for a run in the morning because she needed the stress relief, and leaked again for the first time in 2 weeks. So we had the big discussion of, okay, so maybe on those days now, we know you can run symptom-free, but when you're really, really tired, maybe this isn't the best for you. And discussing alternatives like pessaries and tampons and that sort of things. But it's really, really important that they make that informed choice, and that when they come back to you and say, well, so-and-so runs, and it's compliments for her, my comeback is always, well, George Burns smoked until he was 92 and didn't die of lung cancer. So just because he smoked, does that mean you can smoke till 92 and not suffer any consequences of it? No, it's all about genetics and your body and so many other factors involved that you cannot compare yourself or that client to every single client you have. But movement, as much as I hate crunches and most flexion activities, we can give them alternatives and have them make informed choices as to what's best for them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting point too about it's kind of about changing perceptions as well. Like people come in with expectations about what's going to happen and that they're going to get this fixed up and they're going to be able to go and do, whatever, go back to crunches or go back to this. But part of also what we're trying to do is change the messaging around pregnancy and birth movement and recovery, and get people paying attention to the recovery and thinking about it differently. Because right now, the fact of the matter is women are finding out about this way beyond what I think would be ideal. So most people that are coming to our websites or any of the other people that are talking about this stuff, they want the quick fix. They want the what's the protocol I need to follow? I just got to fix this. I have to close it. I have to heal it. These are all the words that are being thrown out there. And because they're used to hard and intense and core classes, when they come to our classes or when they come to working with us, they think it's boring. They don't think it's going to work. They don't understand and appreciate the need to do it. So that's another challenge, even when we go back to the classes comment that we were talking about earlier. But it really is the informed consent and choice is talked a lot about in the birth world. We need to just add the piece in there about informed choice and movement as well, so that people are making appropriate choices in their pregnancies and that they're set up to recover differently than they currently are. And that's kind of what our whole mission is. We've got to get people preparing for it, prepare for their recovery, but prepare their core in pregnancy, how they can optimize their body for that birth, and that they do need to recover and they need to retrain and do all that. So that piece is really overlooked. So one of the other clients I had last week, I had them both on the same day. They were both from the same town. One was 6 weeks postpartum, one was 10 weeks postpartum, and they didn't know each other. So I thought I should make a little, speed dating, hook them up. But the first one that come in, who was 6 weeks postpartum, she says, okay, I'm just here because I had my baby 6 weeks ago. I just want to, make sure that I'm okay and know what I need to go now to get my body back. She's a fitness instructor. In her pregnancy and in her fitness life, she does boot camp throughout her pregnancy. She did CrossFit, HIIT training, all things that, there are places for that movement for some people. And then I said, so which of those do you want to go back to? And she said, all of them. I said, okay. And she said, I'm ready. I'm ready to go now. Will you clear me? And I said, well, you need to have, went through the spiel of the pelvic floor physio and everything. And so I assessed her. She had a very large separation, the whole length. She could generate a little bit of tension. So I would still consider her a functional diastasis, but she definitely had some work to do. And as we're kind of going through assessment, I'm talking about, what she teaches spin, she teaches boot camp. And she said, yeah, actually, I just got a call to sub a class today. And I said, pardon? I said, you're 6 weeks postpartum. She goes, yeah. I go, and you said no. And she goes, yeah. I said, no, I was feeling a little bit tired. And I go, I can't believe they even called you. Shame on that gym for calling you at 6 weeks postpartum. Like, we have to change the expectation. There's, what I'm seeing now in like social media, and I just saw the thing yesterday talking about, it was Cosmo Bod, I think was the page on Facebook. And they were showing all these pregnant women doing crazy intense exercise. It's totally possible. It's safe for the baby. It's totally possible to do all those exercises, but is it optimal? No, I don't think that it is. And so there's a big movement to try to say, just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I can't do whatever the F I want to. And that then translates into, yeah, so what I said, baby, 2 weeks ago, I'm good. I can go teach. I can do all these things. And I just, it kind of breaks my heart a little. And we need to change that.
I bet you $1 million she told the gym when she left, don't worry, I'll be back. Give me a call. Let me know. I'll get my OB's appointment like 4 to 6 weeks. I should be okay. Give me a call. I bet you $1 million she gave them clearance and permission to check in with her.
Probably.
Oh.
Yeah. It's so.
Because remember too, like, especially, was this her first child?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember too, I mean, I was there. I was in the gym 6 weeks and 1 day after I saw my OB doing crunches on the ball. And all the trainers were like, what the hell are you doing here? And I was like, what? So what? I just had a baby. She's in the nursery. I'm doing my crunches. I'm getting my abs back. Like, come on. It was just, so I just had a baby. Big crap. You don't.
You know, I wasn't a pelvic floor physio when I had my kids, and yeah, so 8 weeks postpartum, I was playing competitive ultimate frisbee,
Of
running,
course we were.
jumping, and I had Matthew on the sidelines crying, and I blew my knee out when he was about 4 months old. And I can tell you why now, because I had no core support stabilizing. So when I knelt down beside him as the good little physio, I didn't bend over and hurt my back. And then they called me back onto the scene, onto the field. So I twisted and I blew my knee. So luckily for me, I did that. So I stopped. I had to stop playing. And it always brings me back to the comparison I make. And one of these days I will write that blog of an ACL repair and a perineal repair. So after you blow your knee out, you go to physio for 2 to 4 to 6 or 8 weeks, depending on how long the surgery will be. We do a lot of prehab. So we're doing dinky little exercises, getting you ready for the surgery. And then you have the surgery. And then at 2 weeks post-op, I get you back. And we start the dinky little exercises again. So you stick a 48-ounce can under your knee and you do little knee squeezes and quad over roll. And then we do a little bit more. Then we do some glutes. Then we do some maybe standing stuff. You are not cleared for competitive return. So anything high intensity or loaded for 6 to 8 months. And I have the protocol outlined, and every surgeon has a little tweak to their protocol, but it's all 6 to 8 months before competitive return to sport. And you compare that to perineal repair, where there was a tear in the tissue that supports the same type of tissue essentially. So we've got pelvic floor muscles tearing, we've got fascia and connective tissue tearing. And that tissue holds up all the pelvic organs and supports the entire system, including breathing, continence. So it actually has a lot more responsibility than just your knee. And you get a 6-week green light. If the surgeon who did the ACL gave a 6-week green light to an athlete and they blew their knee out again, they'd be in real hot water. But that's not happening on the OB side. And it's really the same stuff. We really need a protocol where we're looking at 6 to 8 months before this return or even consideration of return to these high intensity sports. Now I have had some CrossFitters one in particular who did really well. She tapered. She's still lifting, even on tapering to about 50-60%, was still lifting heavier than most women do, but she was down. And then at 2 weeks I checked her. She actually could generate tension at 2 weeks postpartum, and at 6 weeks she was looking really good. And so we started really creating a program that was going to get her back into the box very, very quickly, and ideally by 6 to 8 months. And so her return is going to be fantastic, but she was smart enough to know that she couldn't go back to the box and lift what she lifted 6 weeks ago. If you've been injured in any other injury, it's expected that you're going to take time off and then have a slow rehab return. And that's the change in mentality that we need to give these women. And as trainers, you are the ones that have to give it to them because they will listen to you. And then of course with pelvic floor physio to the good ones at least, to release them and to give them clearance of, are they automated or not? Are they actually engaging or not? And how much more work they need to do before they actually do these activities. I'll sit on the floor, I'll get them to lift their 20-pound baby over their head or use the weights, and I'm looking to see if that core is coming on. And then if it isn't after a certain point, we have to go outside the pelvic floor and look at why. Why is something, what's affecting it or driving it? Who's the villain? And the pelvic floor being the victim? Or is the pelvic floor the villain, being the one that's injured and unable to stabilize during this lift or during this task? So changing their attitudes towards how long it's going to take to get back. And then on the second and third kid, it always takes longer. There's so much more in your life to do that it takes that little bit longer. And we need to teach the women patience and educate them. And that's our job and our responsibility, because by the time we get the doctors on board, it'll be another 20 years.
Okay, but then you get a group of women who come to your class and go, but I'm not postpartum. I had my baby 3 or 4 years ago. I don't need that one.
Wrong.
Postpartum
forever.
Yeah, I know.
And it's all about the rehab, right? So it's all about, the science is quite fascinating. They cannot come up with a perfect number of months or years between children they've done it for psychologically for the children's development in those phases, but they haven't done it in terms of musculoskeletal or physical rehabilitation. And it's because, oh, okay, it's recording again. So that on its own is a bigger determinant as to when the optimal time for having another baby is that have you rehabbed, have you recovered from the first one or the second one or the third one?
I know that. I'm just, yeah.
I know, but we're telling them.
I guess we just need to keep going and keep doing what we're going to do, because the tides are slowly turning, and we, as much as it can still be frustrating to see some of the things that we see and hear the things that we hear, we are still making a difference, and it will start to translate to next generation, and we should be excited and happy about the work that we're doing, and knowing that we are making change.
And getting, I'm just thinking about Annette right now. So Annette is one of the trainers who took our course last June. She started doing testimonials, video testimonials, and she did one and she posted on Instagram. God, I can't remember her handle, but she's here in the Facebook group. You can ask her to post it, or I can ask her to post it after. And she said she got so many views from that, and so many people asking her after, because this was a woman who's clearly not a new mom. And she says in the video that she was a little bit, I wasn't quite sure. I just went to her to get my core back. And she was so pleasantly surprised that she wasn't leaking anymore. Like that wasn't even, so I guess maybe, I don't know if she had divulged that information to Annette in the beginning. A lot of people still won't admit it. Even if you blatantly ask them directly, they still won't, either whether they're embarrassed or they don't think it's an issue that needs to be fixed. But as many as, if you can get these testimonials, like a 10-second, if people feel comfortable, of course, obviously being recorded, or written testimonial. So for you get these people who are like, I'm only I'm not postpartum anymore. Is this really going to help? Or, all the naysayers, if they have people they can relate to that, because I mean, of course we're going to say it's good, but people look at us all the time and go, well, it doesn't happen to you. Like, what do you know? Right? You guys are perfect. You're fitness people. When we know that we're all, we are all perfect, but still.
Perfectly imperfect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we have some questions that were sent in. So one of them, so this person has asked a question saying, in the core breath, I understand that the exhale is via pursed lips, which I understand helps to keep or deepen the engagement of the TVA in the pelvic floor. What are your thoughts on a controlled ha exhale that is out the back of your throat? Did I lose you guys?
No, I see you.
Oh, you guys can see me?
We're here, Ken.
Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Julia. You're ready to go.
So you need to test everything, every cue with every client. Every client will respond differently. The ha makes me a little nervous because I actually use that in birthing to release the floor and lengthen the floor. So if that's a cue that you actually notice they're doing better, they're moving better, or they feel a lift on the ha, it'll also depend on what sound you make. So a very high pitch ha is going to get the floor on versus a very low pitch is going to help birth and lengthen the floor. So being really, really mindful, looking at your cues and testing with each one. The ha makes me a little bit nervous, whereas the pursed lip breathing is designed to slow the air down and give resistance against the diaphragm. And so we're getting a little bit more time and a little bit more synchronicity between the pelvic floor and the diaphragm. So I do like the pursed lip breathing better. If they're having a lot of trouble, sometimes I don't even have them pursed lip. I'll just have them exhale. And then when we teach coughing, so you need the timing with the pelvic floor for a cough so you don't leak for a stress urinary incontinence. And so then we get into like a clearing the throat. So we're going against that resistance. So if it works for her, I'm all for it, but it just makes me nervous a little bit because we actually use the ha and the huffing for other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the same thing. And even just trying it, I always just try things on myself too. And when if I do a gentle, like, I don't know if you can hear me, but kind of like Ujjayi breathing, where you have the ocean sound at the back of your throat, which I think is what she's maybe referencing to, then I I can feel that. I can feel an activation. I don't feel it as strong as when I purse my lips and blow. That's me though, that's my body. So I would get your client to try it. I would try it on yourself so you know how to explain it in your own body. And at the end of the day, as long as the exhalation is happening without downward pressure and they're feeling the lift in their floor, then whatever they do to make that happen is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are clients who have what we term inversion of command. So they actually release when you ask them to contract and contract when you ask them to release. And so this cue could work. Oh yeah, you were like that the last time, eh, Sam?
That's me.
So it could work. So don't knock any cue until you try it. My women with inversion of command, I ask them if they would put their fingers in their vagina when they're in the shower or the bathroom or on the subway, whatever turns, wherever they think of it and have time.
They're going to put their fingers in the vagina on the subway?
I'm kidding, Sam.
Oh.
I do tell them, but I make it a joke. Just to remind them, so when they're on the subway, they'll be like, oh yeah. Anyways, so I'll get them to put their fingers in, and regardless of the cue, they should feel that kind of draw up and in, so like a squeeze and a lift. So they should feel their fingers being drawn inward versus their fingers being pushed out. They can do it with a dilator too if they want. Tampons aren't that proprioceptive. If they have an epino, that's great. They can try the epino. There's a lot of different ways to test them at home that they can test their husband's penis, their partner's fingers, whole whack of things if you're really uncertain, especially while they're waiting to get in to see a pelvic floor physio if they have a wait list.
Yep. Okay. The other question was, so I understand the downward pressure that crunches can cause once a postpartum client has retrained their core and is ready to return to regular physical activity. What are your thoughts? And this person is a Pilates person, I believe, because they said an AB5 or the AB5 series in classical Pilates, which I'm not familiar with what the AB5 series is in classical Pilates, so I can't answer to that. But I'd say, honestly, that's probably one of the most common questions we get from people who've taken our class. Okay, so I get that we need to retrain the core. Once their core is retrained, can we go back to crunches? And we were sort of talking a little bit at the beginning of the conversation. So the flexion activities are something that exists in our life, but do we need to train them in crunches? We know that there's, in many different forms of crunches, there's a lot of downward pressure and descent of the bladder. We know that crunches only recruit, I believe it's 20% of
less than.
And so just those two reasons alone are enough to say, well, maybe how else could we do it? What else could we do that would be maybe some sort of type of flexion that wouldn't be a true crunch? So there's the McGill crunch. Maybe we want to look at that. So there's the point being is I don't take anybody back to crunches. I know Julia does not. I know Sam does not. We don't do crunch type activities. So will they ever go back? Well, again, it becomes informed choice. If that person feels the only way they're going to get their abs back is to do crunches, they know why they shouldn't be doing them and they still choose to, that's their prerogative. Pilates is definitely a very flexion-based technique. Most Pilates has a lot of flexion, and we are working, there's quite a few people that have taken Pilates course, who are Pilates trained, who have taken our course and who have been trying to incorporate our stuff into Pilates. And so we're going to look at down the road if that's something that we might be able to offer, but we're not sure yet. So we've got some investigating to do on the Pilates side, but in the grand scheme of things, the general consensus is we don't have people going back to crunches, but we also have to look at what is their, as Diane Lee calls it, their meaningful task. If they need to do, like Julia, you should talk. You had a client, I believe, who was an actor or something, right? So
yeah, I've had two that have to do it. The one that's really an interesting story is who's an actor, and in the scene, she was laying on the floor and had to come up, both legs, one arm, and jackknife up off the ground. I asked if we could change the scene. They said no. Whatever, it's drama, it's acting. So we worked very, very, very hard at getting her able to do it. First, we had to get her automated. Her pelvic floor and her transverses had to be automated. Her entire core floor had to be in synergy in order for this movement to not cause downward pressure. And there's an interesting study as well. I haven't gotten my hands on the full study, but the abstract is pretty interesting, where they're looking at different intra-abdominal pressures being created during different exercises. And the one that was highlighted in this one article I read that was commenting on the article was about downward dog and crunches were being compared. And when you look at, I forget how many women, it was a lot of women.
Really?
The range was the same. It was like 17, whatever they measured for the intra-abdominal force, to 75. So both crunches and downward dog had the same pressures. So again, it's all about being able to do the movement correctly. So you have women who are creating horrendous downward pressure in downward dog, and you have women who aren't creating that much downward pressure in a crunch. So again, this woman we worked with, I forget which trainer she was with, but we worked really hard at ensuring that she could do this movement without harming her body. The other one was a Pilates instructor in training, and she had to do the roll-ups and roll-downs for her to pass her course, and then she promised me she'd never do them again or teach them ever in her class. So we worked at getting that synergy back again so you can do it. Stu Miguel that Kim mentioned, he's got the top 3 exercises. He is adamant against crunches, and his viewpoint is not so much women's health and pelvic floor, it's actually the spine. So his whole thing is you're ruining your spine. You're creating flexion. With flexion movement, you're increasing not only the intra-abdominal pressure, but your intradiscal pressure. Increases in intradiscal pressure added to a flexion movement will actually push the nucleus of the disc of the spine posteriorly, which results in disc herniations. So he's quite adamant that flexion or crunches are a waste of time. I agree, and being, working as a spine therapist for 12 years, the amount of flexion in our lives. So we want to look again, some of his studies, Stu McGill, are comparing flexion moment with flexion movement. So, and they are different. So flexion moment is a resistance against, so your plank will have, especially if you move your arms, will have some flexion moment to it. Taking a pulley and pulling it down, but not moving your trunk will have some flexion moment to it. You don't necessarily have to retrain it with flexion movement. And that's the point that I try to make with my patients, where we have so many other alternatives to get your core strong, your tummy flat, and keep you in synergy and prevent any of the harmful movements. But again, you have to evaluate each woman, and this is hard when you're dealing with classes, but each woman is going to be individual and she needs to be treated as an individual. As much as I'd like kind of a protocol for postpartum rehabilitation, even with my ACLs, they don't all progress at the same rate. They don't all react the same way, and that's a much more standardized surgery than your birth. So when you're looking at when are they going to get back to flexion, resisted flexion activities, we have science that says they don't. If you train their flexion moment, their flexion movement will come back strong. And training in flexion movement has more harmful effects. I will not do it unless my arm is twisted, which has been happened twice, and they were fully aware. I mean, when it was her career and she would have lost the part was really integral to her career. So she made an informed choice, knowing that she was going to, never do this movement again in training. And we didn't train her in the movement. We trained her in flexion moment, and she was able to do it. So it's looking at, can they do this with the most minimal amount of intra-abdominal pressure? And the science is there to prove that you can. And so my recommendation is, no, I don't think crunches, and didn't I totally tear apart a blog the other day? There is no defense for crunches. No one has yet given me any science or clinical data that tells me that crunches are a good thing.
How do you train a flexion moment?
So you missed that you were getting your power cord. So flexion moment, you can go into plank and then move toward the direction where your core has to come on. So you mentioned Stu McGill's studies show that rectus abdominis only works about or less than 20% in a crunch. So really, what are you doing the crunch for? You're doing it for a flat tummy, but you're not engaging your core muscle, your abdominals that much. So if you go into a plank, which his study also shows, especially the walking plank where you're in plank and then move your hands and nothing else moves on your body, that's a flexion moment where your body has to resist the desire to collapse. And so flexion moment is anything that resists the movement. Did that come out more clear?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think I'll just finish by saying, you know, when people say they want to do crunches, and of course, you know, I kind of make a joke and say, like, we've worked all this time and I've told you why, like, crunches aren't a good idea. And then they'll be like, yeah, I know, but I want to feel that burn. And that's the thing. Okay, so let's find something else that gives you that burn that you desire, which I totally get, without causing your body harm. And they're like, okay, right? And we know that everybody who does crunches hates planks. That's why they do crunches.
Yeah.
Crunches are way easier, right?
My favorite one, so if we're talking about the postpartum woman who's fully rehabbed and at the point where she could do crunches, my favorite is stir the pot. It's another Stu McGill exercise. Yeah. And I'll tell you, way back when I met Stu McGill, I met him because I read an article and there was something I didn't understand in his article, so I went to take his course. He's actually a brilliant man, but he doesn't treat postpartum women. His client population is elite level athletes. I got my niece in to see him because she was a Commonwealth gymnast and she had a scholarship for track in the US to a US school, and she just missed the Olympics last summer because she put her back out again. But that's the level of athlete he's working with. He's not working with postpartum women. And so when I asked him about diastasis, he didn't have an opinion, which I thought was a good answer because he doesn't study it. So I went back to clinic and I tried his top 3 exercises with all my diastasis women. They all got worse. So you really need to be at a high level to do some of these exercises. And women get there. Like, that's the whole point, is you want to build and get to that point where they could do these higher intensities, higher demanding exercises, heavier weights, you know, all these HIIT and CrossFit and all these exercises can be done for certain women postpartum, but it takes a long time to get there. But one of the important things, I totally lost track of my thought, but there was an important point there.
It'll come back.
Sorry.
One more thing. So the other question that was posed to us in an email was talking about the effect of the transversus actually pulling, technically opening and widening the diastasis. And on Diane Lee's site, she has a great graphic showing the different, what happens with the diastasis with activation of rectus, activation of transversus, whatever. So Julia, do you want to talk? So the person's question was, if you focus on the transversus, isn't the transversus actually pulling the separation wider?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And that's the whole point. So that's why the gap doesn't matter. The IRD, the distance between the 2 rectus muscles, doesn't matter. When you do a crunch, and I don't know who she had illustrated, but it's brilliant. When you do a crunch, your rectus muscles, they're laying kind of like this. And when you do a crunch, they come closer together. So that's why for years and years and years, it's been prescribed to give the head lift or crunch type movements. And there was a recent study, because I was on the Ross course, and that wasn't that long ago. So maybe in the last 2 years, there was a study out of Germany that talked about, you know, crunches being great for diastasis because, you know, instead of all this hoopla about crunches being bad for diastasis, crunches are good for diastasis because they close the interrecti distance. But we don't care about the interrecti distance. And this is the biggest reason is, so where the recti sit, when you do a crunch or a flexion movement, the rectus come together. Now, if you just do transversus pulls it apart. If you do your whole core 4 together and come up into a crunch, you will see that I think it was flexion with it as well, in her diagram?
It just said transversus with, I forget what
with
the
rectus abdominis. So if she doesn't have pelvic floor on there, which is the only thing I would add in, but if you're getting transversus, chances are you're getting pelvic floor. So we'll just assume they're getting pelvic floor to get the transversus, and then they're adding RA. So this is the curl up task. So when TA and RA come on together, then what you'll see is a little bit of separation, but not as much. So they counter each other out, or sorry, cancel each other out.
Yeah.
And so that you get this nice tension across the midline, and transversus doesn't pull the IRD too far apart, and rectus doesn't just pull it together. Did that answer the question?
So it's almost like it stays the same.
Yes. So I'm playing devil's advocate here, like I always do with all of us. We have very sometimes heated discussions about this. So you could argue then that doing head lift could be a beneficial exercise because we would be generating tension and we would be approximating the rectus. So
Yes.
for a while it was, let's do head lifts and focus on getting the rectus back together. Then it became, let's focus on transversus to try to get the tension. So I'm thinking somewhere, like anything, we always go to the extremes and we come back in the middle. So that to me could almost be like the flexion moment when you have your head is just lifted up off the ground.
That's movement. That automatically implies movement. So as soon as your head comes up, you've got flexion movement.
So where would the moment be in that then?
The moment would be, so if you want rectus and transversus on, you go to a plank. And then if you want to add more, then you go to a moving plank. You can go into all fours and start doing bird dog.
I know what but I know what Kim's coming to. So it wouldn't necessarily maybe hurt, right? So I guess at the end, you want to be able to get up out of your bed like that, but then that is something that I don't think I know I'm not qualified to do. And I would highly suggest that none of our trainers, like, don't get in your head that, oh, our goal is I'm going to be able to teach you how to do a curl up with that. That is something a pelvic floor physio would be the only one to be able to assess that everything is coming on internally and properly during that curl up task.
And I still wouldn't give it, even if it was.
Okay.
But when you're tired, especially as a new mom, when you're tired, your system doesn't always work. So like my example of my runner who was leaking, we let her run a little bit to keep her sanity and keep her in therapy. And then she ran a couple of leaking free, but then her son got sick. I think 2 or 3 nights, she had very poor sleep. She was really stressed and went for a run to de-stress and leaked. And then there was even another day in her case where she was just carrying her son for 3 hours because he was sick and needy and leaked while she was carrying him. So I don't give the head lift ever. I tell them while I'm testing curl up task, this is a test. I will never give this to you as an exercise. We want to make sure that you are automated in this movement. Now, the one time that I probably have done it is everything else is perfect except they can't lift their head. So that particular person hasn't been able to transfer the motor patterning from lifting their legs and moving their arms to lifting their head off the bed. So I put them on ultrasound. So as Sam was saying, this is where we come in, put them on ultrasound, make sure that everything's going all right. You've got a finger in the vagina, ultrasound on the TVA, and we've got her lifting and trying to connect all these 4. Did it in therapy, she got it, stopped, did a couple more without the biofeedback, she got it, we're done. This is not something I'm going to send her home with regardless, because we can't just isolate, well, she doesn't bulge down on her pelvic floor. Yeah, but what's happening to her neck? What's happening to the discs in her low back? And why are we, and this has always been one of Kim's points, so I love when Kim's devil advocate, because then I throw back her points when she was arguing against from the last time, is it's when you're doing that that curl up task, there's still a lot of roundiness that's happening through the T-spine and down through the front. And we spend so much of our time curled and slouched and C-shaped and rounded. Why would you want to put them in more of that shortened position? It just, none of it makes any sense to me at all.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock.
Okay, done.
Not that I don't have places to go and people to see, but I'm starving. Julia's got vaginas to stick her fingers in. Kim has stuff to do.
I got business stuff to do.
She has business to do. She's got ab systems to mail and, worlds to take over. So, okay, so this was recorded the whole time. I've been looking at the top left of my screen recording. So we're going to end this meeting. We're going to send it all to you so you can look at it when you want. Well, again, we'll see you next month, first Monday of every month. Make sure to send in your questions. There was no chat going on here, but we're still able to answer the questions. So yeah. And hope you have a good day. Peace out.
Peace out.
Bye.
Core breath out.
Core breath out.